you could do that, the amount of roster turnover you could do. And West Virginia's got a pretty attractive thing to sell. The Big 12 is a wide open league. They've got spots for people to play. Some of the guys they've added that are pretty high impact transfers. And it's kind of what I was talking about before is I felt like in the past, West Virginia would get a certain amount of guys and, all right, this is what we've got. We've got 6 wide receivers. This time I kind of went in with that mindset. All right, they've got, X amount of tight ends, X amount of running back, but they kept adding guys that can possibly help them. And I think that only thing that's going to do is increase the competition and make the product better.
Yeah.
Keenan, I know it's way too early, but it's almost like I shouldn't go to the cookie jar and grab a chocolate chip cookie, but I have, and it's looking at what the rest of the league has. And so I looked at a number of publications recently, I think 6 of them, which teams they think going into the season have the best chance to grab the league title. I just wanted to run these by you. I mean, this is really a shot in the dark, but to see what you're hearing. They were in 2 tiers, at least as I see it. The top tier was Arizona State. No surprise given what happened last year, going to the college football playoff. Kansas State and Texas Tech. Texas Tech is just killing it in the portal. They have so much money compared to many of the other teams. And the second tier is BYU. No surprise there, given what happened last year. TCU and Iowa State. Is that in the ballpark in terms of how you're reading the tea leaves?
Say that's probably where I would slot them, but all you got to do is look at last year, guys. Arizona State was picked last, won the league. I mean, it's crazy how crazy this is now. You rarely saw that before. You saw teams surprise, but it's so hard nowadays. I've had people ask me, well, what do you think about this team? What do you think about that team? It's so hard enough to keep up with the own roster that you cover that you don't really have a beat. You do a lot of the same things I was mentioning earlier. When you're slotting these teams preseason, you kind of look at who's returning, who they brought in, and then do a lot of guesswork. And I think those preseason media polls and preseason polls probably hold less value than they ever have in this climate, just because we're all projecting. There's been plenty of transfers, can't miss guys that were supposed to be great that haven't done great. And then there's been guys like Beanie Bishop who kind of slid in, had a subpar season at Minnesota, becomes a consensus All-American at West Virginia. So it's so hard to project, and a lot of it is teams meshing too. I mean, it's a big factor here. Culture, meshing. Sometimes teams have great pieces. They're not great together. So that's where I trust, and kind of goes back to my general point about Rich. He knows how to build a program. And I think that he will be able to do this the right way and kind of get things together the way he wants to. Obviously, you're going to have to go out and win football games. My dad always said, talk is cheap. It takes money to buy whiskey. So I think you got to go out and win some games. And if they do that, I think it's going to win over any fans that have a little bit of sore feelings. Winning cures everything.
Oh, yeah. Switching gears just a tad, basketball-wise, I know right now you're consumed with the football, but I know you obviously watch the basketball as well. What's your thoughts on the new coach there and what he's putting together? One thing about the basketball roster is how big these guys are. He's bringing in a lot of big guys, and I think that's one thing in the past, and we've noticed that we didn't always have that size to match up well in the Big 12, but seems like he's focused on getting some big physical dudes in there to play.
Yeah, speaking to Hodge, I really like the guy. I've got to talk to him when he was introduced. He's very polite, great, really personal guy. Think that he's going to do well here. He understands how to build programs, kind of in the same sense that Rich Rodriguez has. You come up for the junior college where you're basically rebuilding your rosters every year. At North Texas, he was head coach there 2 years. He had to replace basically his entire roster each season. So he's done it before. You look at what they've already done, it kind of speaks to that. They already have 10 Harlan Obioha, guys that West Virginia was linked to pretty much as soon as they were in the portal. They were able to get those guys. And when you look at the roster construction, you mentioned the size. I do think they're pretty big in a lot of spots. We can get into what else they still need to add, but I think the things that stick out to me is the size, length, versatility, and they have shooters. Not everybody's going to check those 4 boxes, but for the most part, the roster checks those 4 boxes. They got a lot of guys that can shoot, space the floor, and I thought it was interesting. I was talking to Jaden Forsyth, and one of the big things, kind of one of the, I guess, drawbacks that people had with Hodge when he was at North Texas was his pace of play on offense. They were more deliberate, and I talked to him about that when he was hired. I asked him, was that a product of the personnel? Is that how you want to play? And he pretty much told me, if they want to compete for championships at North Texas, they're not going to get down the floor and outrun Kansas or Gonzaga. They had to play that way. You get better athletes, you get better players, you can increase that pace of play. And Jaden Forsyth told me one of the things he really liked about the plan is they want to get out in transition and run. So I think anybody out there that wants to see a faster pace of play than what they used at North Texas, I think you're going to get your wish.
Yeah, I think that's exciting too. I think we're looking forward to basketball as well. I know I am, but I want to ask you too, and again, I know a lot of speculation, that sort of thing, but where do you see all this heading? I mean, you pay attention to it. We try best we can, but where do you see all this this coming to a head? At some point, it has to, I would think, stabilize. I mean, I know we all hope it does, but what's your thoughts on as far as the the effects of the revenue sharing and those type of things? What do you see next 3, 4, 5 years?
I think eventually, as long as the House settlement is approved, there is a pathway for this to at least stabilize some. Now, obviously, that's still up in the air. Who knows what happens with that? I think the expectation is that will be, but once schools are able to control it in-house, they're supposed to be able to regulate these third-party collective deals more and things like that. So I think that'll cut down on some of that. You'll be able to retain your players more because, there's a salary cap in a sense. Now, NIL will still be a factor, but as I mentioned, it's expected. I say expected because I truly don't know, but to be more regulated. So I do think that it's going to help it because right now, I mean, guys, we just have an unsustainable model in college sports.
Yeah.
I mean, Rich and anybody else that's talked about it is not wrong. It's open free agency. It's kind of pro football without the strings or the binds that make pro football. There's not contracts. Guys can take an NIL deal in December and leave in April if they want to.
Yep.
I mean, it's the nature of the beast. And right now, I'm just not sure how long that can last. I do think that, at least for football, coaches want to see one transfer portal in the winter. I'm not sure if that will happen, but usually it tends to do when coaches are all on board with something. That's something they'd all like to see. I think that would cut down some of this madness this time of the year. You'd pretty much have all the craziness right after the season, and then you'll go into kind of a period where you're working with the roster you have. They've made some changes to help, with the transfer portal windows. It hadn't been that long ago that the transfer portal was open year round. You could go in any time. Guys entered it in August. West Virginia added a guy like Tony Fields in August, back when Neil was the coach. So that's better already. They've cut down on when guys can enter, so that's helped. But that span, guys, those couple weeks that's open, it's a week or 10 days in the spring. I think it's 30 days or whatever, 15, 20. It all runs together to me right now. But in the winter, it's a madhouse. It's just, and it's the best way I can describe it is everyone's always like, how this happened so quickly. I mean, once guys enter the portal, it's not some kind of secret information. Coaching staffs have guys that are all over that. They get in contact with them. You try to get them on campus as quick as possible, and then you try to get them in the fold. It's basically you have a position. You scout most of these guys in advance, guys you think are going to be in there, and then you attack it. It's speed dating at a rapid pace, and you'd like to see that kind of get to more structure because if you're building your team with a lot of guys that are new, you want to try to get to know them a little bit better, and I don't know how you do that with the current situation because it's nuts, guys. It's absolutely just nonstop. I feel like I've just been stuck in the transfer portal. I mean, even though spring practice was in there since December.
I can't, Frank. Frank, you're muted there. We can't hear you. I'll give you a chance to get unmuted, but yeah,
there we go.
There he is. There he is.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Frank.
Well, I was going to say, I don't know how that happened, but technology is technology. I agree with you completely, and Greg asked a great question. Here's the concern I have. I think the fly in the ointment now could be the fly in the ointment in the future. There are crazy things about membership organizations. The members are going to have to work together, and clearly there are two members who want to be able to call all the shots, and that's the Big Ten and the SEC. So we got the House settlement that comes through legal action. What happens if the stability that comes with it, the Big Ten and the SEC say, this is not as good as it was when it was before. So the concern I have is that they'll start throwing their weight around again, because the NCAA has shown they have no ability to control those two conferences. They just can't. I mean, it started years ago when after the situation at Penn State, the NCAA levied a financial sanction against Penn State. Then they had to walk that back a few years later. And ever since then, they've really been very reluctant to do almost anything. And that's why the court proceedings are so important, lawsuits, because that's a path to change. So, yeah, we need more stability. But I guess I would say is that sometimes stability doesn't serve the big boys. They'll want to destabilize it again, and that's my concern. In the end, I think, how do you manage, and can you manage the SEC and the Big Ten?
Yeah, that's a question above my pay grade. I would not. Yeah, I wouldn't even know where to begin there. But you're right. I mean, in a sense, it's going to be a problem. You'd hope at some point that the leagues could work together and make it. I've always said this, and I would like to see this at some point. If there could be some changes, maybe you could regionalize this thing again. Maybe revenue distribution. I know that obviously there's legal loopholes there that they'd have to overcome, but at least it's being talked about a little bit. Package it like the NFL. Regionalize it. We're going to an NFL model and I'm not necessarily saying in the structure, in the way that I guess television and these two leagues treat each other, in a sense that they're kind of treating themselves like they're a mini NFL, but it's not really the same. I know TV numbers, people are going to watch college football playoff. I get that. But for me personally, as a sports journalist, I'm not going to say, oh man, I can't wait to watch that Ohio State Oregon game as I would, a Chiefs Packers game. The appeal's not there. The college sports, to me, it's regionalized. You care about your team and other teams it affects in the national picture. But I think that's what's missing right now. I don't know where that element went out the window, and we've kind of given up tradition and regional rivalries and really some of the things that drew me into wanting to cover college sports. We're in an era now where I'm supposed to care about Rutgers versus UCLA. I don't care about that game.
Right. Yeah, we've had that discussion on here as well. And we concluded, and we know best, that the regional games, in our minds, and of course again, the SEC, the Big Ten may not look at it the same way, but would much rather see games like Pitt, West Virginia, Virginia Tech, UCLA, USC, those type of games, as opposed to seeing West Virginia, Kansas State. And it just seems to me like it would be such an advantage, not only for the fans, but, the universities as well. I think revenue wise, I think that would be much more attractive, for the TV markets and that sort of thing, if they would do it that way. And I've said that all along. They need to regionalize it, make divisions, do it like the NFL. And let your playoffs come from these division winners and wild cards and things of that nature. I think fans would like that, and I think the revenue would be more than adequate.
Mm-hmm. I think the one thing that helps here, maybe for the future, if you want to get to a situation where that could potentially happen, again, it's me just throwing things out there. But if everyone's talked about the super leagues forever. If there is a breaking point in this, you're going to find out the schools that are truly committed to college football through this revenue sharing, the teams that really want to invest. And maybe that narrows this Power Four type model down to 48 teams or whatever. And if you get to that point, maybe you can break it up into two type of divisions. But again, this is me hypothetically projecting things that I truly could never. But that would be the way to kind of, I say this phrase a lot when it comes to college realignment. You need to go backwards to go forwards in a sense in college sports. And I would like to see something like that eventually. You hope that West Virginia is included. You don't want to be left out. Obviously, you'd like to see the current model if that becomes the case. But if you can get to a point, because it's obvious to me, it's obvious to anybody that follows West Virginia that they are committed to being a high-level Division I program. Mm-hmm. They're investing. They're making it a point to matter. Winning matters, and I think that Rich has said that several times this spring. They didn't bring me back for nostalgia. They didn't bring me back. They brought me back to win. And if West Virginia can win in major sports, that perhaps there is a pathway to that in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Well, sure going to be interesting. I know that. And
I can guarantee a lot of things are going to change between now and then.
Yeah. And the good thing is, I guess, I don't know that it can get a whole lot worse. I guess it could, and probably shouldn't say that. But, when you look at these, the transfer portal, those type of things now, you figure it can't get much worse than the situation we have right now. So hopefully whatever does happen will at least make it somewhat better. And I think hopefully it will. I think there's, not just casual fans like myself, but I think people in the field, the experts like yourself, can see, if something's not done, what's going to happen. And I think that everybody wants good stuff to happen. Everybody wants, college sports to be college sports and teams to have a fair playing field and that sort of thing. I think everybody wants that. So hopefully, some more reasonable things will come out in the future. And like I said, solidify this whole thing a little bit more. Frank, you want to finish up here before we sign off for the evening?
Well, I would just say, Keenan, thanks so much. We're almost guilty asking you to come on, knowing all the work you're doing. And I'll just encourage everyone to go to WV Sports, WVSports.com, and go to Keenan's X feed, because it's excellent stuff. It's always fresh. It's thoughtful. It's comprehensive. And the great thing, I think, too, to put the cherry on the top, Keenan, is that you don't insert yourself in terms of, okay, now here's the situation according to Keenan. You do a great job of describing, profiling, analyzing, and it's really up to the fan then to draw an interpretation. So it's like going to school and having a good professor in front of the class. So we appreciate you taking time, and we asked you last time. I hope we can get you back again, because you raise our IQ, no question about that.
Oh, I appreciate that, guys. I have to hang that over my wife's head because she's a teacher. I'll just start calling myself a professor.
Yes, Professor Cummings.
I think, frankly, it would benefit us and our viewers alike to have him back at least every other week to get us filled in on the new roster.
Might be every day.
That's right. Every day. Keenan, over the last couple of days, Greg and I were talking, and we said, when we were getting ready for you, we said, the good thing about Keenan is that he's putting his stuff out there every day. What if Keenan worked on the staff of the print version of Athlon Sports, and you gotta put your stuff together and then have it on the newsstands? They usually come out the end of May, early June, and that's it. I mean, yep. How long is that kind of publication going to even be around, because of the how quickly things change?
Yeah, it's a funny story about that. Yeah, I have done that, and I think that now it's so hard. You have to make changes so rapidly, and not just minor changes. You look at, as mentioned, the offensive line for West Virginia. my first depth chart projection is entirely different than what it looks like 10 days later. I mean, it's insane, and it's such a rapid pace that you almost have to kind of throw depth charts out the window until really the first game of the season. Because anymore, coaches have no incentive to give those. They never really did, but it kind of was a thing to get fans talking. Now, I mean, you put out a depth chart, you might scare a guy off. You might not bring guys in. It's complicated, and it's just change, guys. Change is the one thing that's going to be consistent in college sports until this thing settles.
Yeah, that is for sure. Keenan, thank you so much. Great stuff as always. And seriously, we do look forward to having you back, hopefully before football begins, and we can fill in the gaps at that point, maybe in August. And again, just a wealth of information. And folks, you need to check out his work. Does great stuff. We appreciate you taking the time to join us. We know you're extremely busy right now, so we appreciate the time.
Thank you, guys.
All right, Keenan Cummings, great job, Frank. I tell you, listen to him, discuss these players and positions and knowing what he knows. I just can't imagine trying to keep track of all that. I just, even if you're there every day, it's probably worse if you're there every day because you're seeing it, right? People are walking in the door right past you every day. What a job, my goodness.
Yeah, it's you run so fast, and what happens, they often say speed kills, and I think one of the things, and I'll talk in a few minutes, our guest next week, and he thinks a lot and deeply and has the knowledge. What's going on? Where's it going to go? And I think one of the issues here that we need to talk about in more detail next week is if you're tiptoeing to a pro model, then have a pro model. Don't go half the way, go all the way. Right. So, for example, it has already come up. It came up at Oklahoma. It came up in Colorado that there would be, rather than having a spring game intra-squad, that there be a spring inter-squad. So Oklahoma would play Oklahoma State, Colorado would play Colorado State, something like that. Well, that's getting into the preseason, the NFL preseason. And the other thing is, Charlie Baker is president of the NCAA. I'll tell you, Roger Goodell is not the president of the NFL. He's a commissioner. And the same thing with baseball. Same thing with hockey. And if you're going to move in a certain direction and you're on that road, then just basically keep on walking. And, because I think what's happening now is we're getting to the point that not that interest is getting frayed, but it's starting to show. I hear it from fans. It's starting to show. We got to have more stability. The game has changed so much. When does it change too much before it's not the game we knew? It's some other thing. So
and ultimately, I think that people will lose interest at some point. Not totally, but I think there'll be fans my age, for example, who are not super fans, but fans and watch that will turn off to it because they just don't they just can't follow it, and they just can't, and they don't get to know their team and their players and that sort of thing. And I think if that would start happening again, then something got to change, and money talks. And I just you just hope that there's enough cooler heads out there that understand what needs to be done. We're not experts by any means, and we speak to it from a fan's perspective, what we would like to see. And I personally think what we've talked about, what we would like to see would be successful. And I'm like you, if you're going to do the pro model, then do it. Let's do it and be done with it, and get this thing situated and stabilized. And that way, I think that not only do you keep your fans that you have, but you start growing even more fans because it becomes more interesting in my mind. I just think what's happened now is and I'm not going to lie, I love Mountaineers and love football and love college football. But sometimes it's hard to get excited for, West Virginia and Kansas or West Virginia and even Iowa State or, any of those teams. It's just hard sometimes, to get excited about them because it's just not the close rivalry and you don't know the fan bases and, it's just different. And, I think ultimately you're going to start losing people if it continues where not only do you not know the opposing teams, you don't know your own team, and that makes it tough to get excited for.
Yeah. Well, Greg, that's a perfect lead in to Darren throwing up the graphic of next week's guest, because just like if you could put that up a little bit bigger, Darren, that would be great. Because there it is. Thank you. That Keenan is focusing on West Virginia, does an excellent job, and Tony does the same thing nationally, and he is the leading what I would call college football and basketball, particularly football analyst. He's an analytics guy. We've had him on before. He's brilliant, and that's just one example. That chart, you can't read it, and that's really irrelevant. But what it is it looks at 10-year growth across the conferences, revenues in green and expenditures in red. And so when he talks about the future, it's always grounded in, okay, what are the data telling us today? It's almost like, someone serving on the Federal Reserve, they look at economic data and decide whether they're going to increase or keep interest rates the same or lower them. And that's exactly what Tony does for college sports. And so we're really pleased to have him with us next week. And let me just refer you on the bottom there. You can go to his X feed, TJ Altimore, and he's posting every single day. And a very thoughtful guy.
Yep. Looking forward to that. That's going to be interesting and fun to talk to him. And again, what a tough job, trying to keep track of these teams and what where they're headed, how good they're going to be, et cetera, et cetera. There's no way to do it, and it'll be interesting to get his take on what's coming down the line, because I'm sure he's on top of it, and we'll know. One last thing, Frank, before we sign off. When we started earlier, of course, we had some technical problems, but we talked about the baseball team. I want to remind everybody, big series last of the year coming up this week, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, against Kansas State, and West Virginia needs to win at least one, or Arizona State needs to lose at least one for us to win the conference outright, and then going into tournament time, working our way towards a regional hosting, which would be awesome. So we'll make sure we mention that again. Since we talked about it earlier, then we lost it.
Yeah, I mean, it really comes down to all Mountaineer fans. We need your support. We know we have it, but the baseball team. Let's look at it as we talked earlier about just a couple of games with 1 or 2 innings, usually just one, going sideways. But this team is 40-10. And it's one of the winningest teams in the country, in the top 2 or 3. And they're projected now by Baseball America to host a regional. They're projected as one of the 16 teams that would host a regional. The Big 12 tournament. Hopefully they'll be the 1 seed, and they won't play next Wednesday. They'll play Thursday. It's a single elimination, and so we're just gonna watch tomorrow night, ESPN Plus. And then Friday and Saturday, and then hopefully next week we do the same, ESPN Plus, and then the championship games on ESPNU on Saturday. So a couple of really big weekends coming up for Mountaineer baseball.
Yep, sure is. Can't wait, and we can talk about it some more next week. We'll have a better handle on where we're heading. So look forward to that. Look forward to our guest next week. That's going to be a lot of fun. Appreciate everybody tuning in tonight. We apologize again for the technological problems we had at the beginning. Darren got it all sorted out, and was happy to have Keenan Cummings on with us. Does a great job filling us in on the portal and what's going on and all that with the football and basketball programs. A wealth of information. People need to check him out at Rivals and read his information. Does a great job. Frank, enjoyed it as always. And again, we thank everybody for tuning in. I know we have a little promo here at the end. I think you do. We'll get that out of the way before we sign off.
Hi, everyone. Frank Fear here from Mountaineer Locker Room Then and Now, and we're pleased to be part of the Voice of College Football National Network. Mark Rogers and staff have done a great job with the network, and it's constantly adapting and expanding to bring content to you. Many of you are already following us on X and Facebook and Instagram, and if you're not, here are the URLs, the links to go to and take advantage of all the great content that's there for you. Even if you do that, you may not know some of the new doings at the Voice of College Football Network. One is a new podcast options that already thousands of people are taking advantage of. You can get it on Apple, Spotify, and other podcast networks, and we encourage you to do that. Perhaps the biggest drum roll is the new Voice of College Football website with plenty of content, everything that you want to enjoy and can enjoy about college football. And remember, one thing that makes the Voice of College Football Network different is that we're 24/7, 12 months a year. It never ends. It's college football in the winter, the spring, the summer, and of course, during the fall. We also want to announce, and Mark Rogers again and staff have done a great job with this, a relationship with Amazon.com. And here's Mark to tell you more about it.
You can make a difference here at the Voice of College Football. Use the Amazon link. Financially contribute to the Voice of College Football without spending a penny. Same shopping experience. It's easy. Go to any video on any channel. Go to the description section and grab the link right next to the capital letters that say Amazon. Use that link, and Amazon will instantaneously convert to your account, settings, history, everything intact, just like whatever link you use right now. No difference. Pay no attention to the product that you see right there. Just go search what you want. Don't forget the Amazon link. Thank you for your support. Sincerely, the Voice of College Football.
Well, that's it for now. Let me thank you for your loyalty. The Voice of College Football Network. This is Frank Fear for Mountaineer Locker Room Then and Now. Hope to see you on our channel and other channels, VOCF. Take care, everybody.